The hardest thing about walking away isn't the leaving, it's the letting go of the emotional weight you still carry. We think forgetting someone means hating them, or constantly reminding ourselves of why they hurt us. But real forgetting doesn't come from anger, it comes from indifference. When you can look back and feel nothing, when you can move forward without replaying old stories, that's when you've truly forgotten him. The secret is to do it coldly, not with drama, not with noise, but with a quiet strength that says, "You were never enough to define my happiness." That's the power that unsettles the ego and frees your heart. Detaching with discipline is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can practice after someone has taken you for granted. So often, when we decide to move on, we think we need to make it dramatic. We imagine that forgetting someone means posting about how strong we are, announcing to the world that we've cut them off, or even engaging in long, fiery conversations to prove how little we care. But true detachment doesn't look like that. True detachment is quiet, intentional, and grounded in discipline. It isn't about punishing them, it's about freeing yourself. The reason discipline matters so much in forgetting someone is because emotions rarely disappear on their own. If you let them lead, you'll find yourself checking his social media, rereading old messages, or sending just one more text when you're feeling lonely late at night. That's what keeps you stuck. Every small interaction, even something as simple as watching his stories, reopens the wound. Detachment requires a conscious decision to cut off that emotional oxygen. You stop feeding the bond by refusing to indulge in the behaviors that keep it alive. It doesn't mean you hate him. In fact, indifference is far more powerful than hate. Hate still means you're tied to him emotionally. Indifference is when you choose not to give energy to his presence or his absence anymore. And indifference isn't built overnight. It's built by discipline, by small, consistent acts of self-control. Maybe it starts with deleting his number so you can't give in when temptation strikes. Maybe it means muting or unfollowing his accounts so you're not constantly reminded of him. Maybe it's simply telling yourself, "I won't give him another ounce of my day." And keeping that promise each time your mind drifts back. The beauty of discipline is that it strengthens you over time. The first few days may feel like a battle. You'll want to reach out. You'll crave the familiar comfort of his attention. But every time you resist, you build resilience. And after a while, it stops feeling like resistance. It starts feeling like freedom. You realize you don't need him for validation. You don't need to know what he's doing. You don't need to remind him you exist. That's when the power shifts, because the less you care, the less control he has. People often think that detaching coldly is cruel, but it's not cruelty. It's clarity. It's drawing a line and saying, "This is where I reclaim my peace." There is no drama in it, no long speeches, no need to explain yourself. When you step away without theatrics, it sends a louder message than any argument could. I am no longer available for this. And ironically, that silence unsettles someone far more than your words ever could. Detaching with discipline also gives you back your time. Instead of wasting hours replaying what went wrong or waiting for his apology, you redirect that energy into your own life. You book plans, chase goals, nurture friendships, and discover new passions. You start filling your world with things that make him irrelevant by comparison. The more full your life becomes, the less space there is for him in it. At the heart of it, forgetting him coldly means you no longer negotiate your worth. You're not trying to convince him to see it. You're not begging for closure, and you're not clinging to the hope of reconciliation. You detach with discipline because you know your value doesn't need his recognition, it stands on its own. And in that quiet strength, in that steady refusal to engage, you'll find the kind of freedom that makes you wonder why you ever thought you needed him at all. Rewriting the story in your favor is one of the most important steps in forgetting someone coldly, because so much of what keeps you attached isn't the person themselves. It's the story you keep telling yourself about them. The human mind loves narratives. We romanticize the good moments. We exaggerate the importance of what they brought into our lives, and we convince ourselves that what we had was irreplaceable. That's why you might catch yourself thinking he was the one that got away, even when deep down you know he wasn't showing up the way you deserved. To truly forget him, you have to rewrite the narrative so it no longer casts him as the hero of your story. The first step is catching the language you use. When you say, "I lost him," what you're really doing is making yourself the victim of your own life. That phrase gives him power. It implies he was something precious, something essential, and now you're left incomplete. But what if instead you said, "I released him," or "I outgrew him"? Those words shift the perspective. They place you back in control. Instead of being someone who lost, you become someone who chose. And choice always feels stronger than loss. Rewriting the story also means refusing to idealize what happened. It's easy to look back with selective memory, replaying the affectionate texts, the fun dates, or the moments when he seemed like he truly cared. But forgetting coldly requires that you tell the whole truth, not just the highlights. Remind yourself of the nights he didn't call, the times he dismissed your feelings, the ways he made you question your worth. That's not to dwell in bitterness, it's to balance the narrative. Because if you only replay the good, you'll keep convincing yourself you let go of something perfect, when in reality, you let go of something inconsistent. Another powerful way to rewrite the story is to see him as a chapter rather than the book. Every relationship teaches you something. Maybe he showed you what you don't want, or maybe he helped you recognize needs you didn't even know you had. Either way, he was never the final destination. He was a stop along the way, and that perspective frees you from believing everything ended when he left. A single chapter doesn't define the whole story, especially when the best chapters are still unwritten. The act of rewriting is also about reclaiming your role. Instead of focusing on how he treated you, focus on what you learned about yourself. Maybe you discovered you're capable of deeper love than you realized. Maybe you uncovered strength you didn't know you had when you finally walked away. Those discoveries are part of your story now, and they're far more valuable than anything he gave you. When you shift the focus from him to you, the story becomes empowering instead of draining. And here's the beauty of this process. When you rewrite the story, you also rewrite the emotions attached to it. If you keep telling yourself he was the love of your life, you'll feel loss and longing. If you tell yourself he was the lesson that set you free, you'll feel relief and pride. Your emotions will always follow the narrative you choose, so choose a narrative that serves you, not one that chains you to the past. In the end, forgetting him coldly doesn't mean erasing the memory, it means reframing it. You don't deny what happened, but you refuse to glorify it. You strip away the illusion, you stop making him larger than life, and you see him for what he was, a temporary character in your journey who highlighted your worth by failing to recognize it. Once you accept that, you'll find it easier to close the chapter without looking back, and to step into the next part of your story knowing that the best pages are still ahead. Forgetting someone coldly is not just about what you stop doing, it's also about what you start doing instead. One of the most powerful ways to erase someone from your heart is to replace waiting with living. Too often, after a breakup or disappointment, people put their lives on pause. They wait for closure, they wait for an apology, they wait for him to finally realize what he lost. That waiting creates a vacuum, and in that empty space, thoughts of him multiply. You're not stuck because of what he did. You're stuck because your life has slowed down while you replay the past. The fastest way to break free is to fill that empty space with action adventure, and movement that makes his absence irrelevant. When you immerse yourself in living, you naturally create new experiences that dilute old memories. Think about it. If your days are filled with the same routines you shared with him, everything will remind you of him. The cafe you went to together, the music you played in the car, the quiet evenings scrolling on your phone while waiting for his message, all of it keeps him alive in your head. But the moment you inject your life with novelty, you give your mind fresh material. That might mean trying a new class, booking a solo trip, starting a side project, or simply saying yes to plans you would normally turn down. Every new experience acts like a brushstroke over the old picture until the image of him fades under the vibrancy of your present. Replacing waiting with living also heals your confidence. Waiting often comes from a place of scarcity, the belief that if he doesn't come back, maybe no one else will. But when you go out and live fully, you remind yourself that the world is overflowing with opportunities, connections, and possibilities. You meet new people, have new conversations, and realize how much richness exists outside of him. Suddenly, he feels less like the one that got away, and more like someone who simply couldn't keep up with the pace of your growth. Another reason this is so powerful is that momentum breeds momentum. When you begin moving forward, even in small ways, you create a sense of progress that energizes you. That energy replaces the stagnation that waiting breeds. Maybe you start with something simple, like joining a gym or picking up a new book. Those small wins accumulate, and soon your focus shifts. You're no longer measuring your days by whether he texted or not. You're measuring them by how much you're accomplishing, how alive you feel, and how many moments you're collecting that have nothing to do with him. This doesn't mean you deny your feelings. You can still have moments of sadness, but instead of sitting in them endlessly, you choose to balance them with action. Living doesn't erase pain instantly, but it puts you in environments where healing can happen naturally. It surrounds you with new stimuli, new energy, and sometimes even new people who remind you what it feels like to be seen and valued. And when your life is full, his memory shrinks to fit the space you allow it. The truth is, waiting gives him power. It tells him, even silently, that you're still holding space for him in your world. Living takes that power back. It says, you may have been part of my past, but you will not dictate my present or my future. And nothing is colder, calmer, or more liberating than showing someone that your life doesn't skip a beat without them. Because the moment you start truly living, you stop needing him to fill the silence. The more you live, the less he lingers, until one day you wake up and realize he's not the center of your thoughts anymore. He's just a name in a story you've already outgrown. Withdrawing your energy like it's currency is one of the most liberating practices when it comes to forgetting someone coldly, because energy truly is the most valuable resource you own. Every time you think about him, talk about him, stalk his social media, or replay old conversations in your mind, you're spending a piece of yourself. The problem is, when you invest that energy into someone who doesn't give back, you're essentially throwing money into a slot machine that's rigged to never pay out. At some point, you have to recognize that your attention is a form of currency, and it deserves to be spent where there are real returns. When you treat your energy this way, you start to become very intentional about where it goes. Ask yourself, if you had $100 in your pocket, would you hand it to someone who has already shown they don't value it? Of course not. Yet when it comes to relationships, we do exactly that with our energy. We give endless amounts of attention to people who don't invest back and then wonder why we feel drained. By seeing your energy as currency, you begin to guard it with the same seriousness you would guard your finances. Withdrawing your energy doesn't mean acting bitter or resentful. It simply means redirecting your focus from him to yourself. Instead of checking if he's viewed your story, you could use that same 2 minutes to send a message to a friend, read a page from a book, or even take a breath and be still. Instead of spending hours analyzing what he meant by his last text, you could spend those hours pursuing something that makes you feel alive. Each time you withdraw your energy from him, you're not just saving it, you're reinvesting it somewhere it can grow. The fascinating thing about this is that energy has compound interest, just like money. The more you pull back from him and redirect toward your passions, goals, and relationships, the richer your life becomes. Suddenly, the very things that once drained you begin to fuel you, and as your world expands, his presence, or lack of it, shrinks in importance. He no longer feels like the center of your story because you've placed yourself back in that role. It also helps to remember that where energy flows, attachment grows. If you keep giving energy to someone, even negative energy, your attachment strengthens. That's why arguments, stalking, or obsessing over closure never work. You think you're moving on, but really you're just feeding the bond. Withdrawal is powerful because it starves the connection. When you stop giving him your attention, you stop giving him access to your emotions. And without that access, the bond begins to dissolve. There will be moments where you feel tempted to give just a little more. Maybe one last message, one last scroll through his photos, one last check in. But in those moments, remember the principle. Would you hand over your last dollar to someone who squandered the first 99? If the answer is no, then don't hand over your energy either. Protect it, value it, see it as the most sacred resource you have. And here's the beautiful irony. When you finally withdraw your energy, that's often when people notice the most. When he no longer feels your presence, when you're no longer available, when your attention has been cut off, that absence speaks louder than words. But by then, it doesn't matter because your energy is no longer about him, it's about you. Forgetting him coldly isn't about teaching him a lesson. It's about teaching yourself that your energy deserves better investments. And when you truly honor that, you won't just forget him. You'll thank yourself for finally walking away with your energy intact, ready to pour it into the life you deserve. Elevating your standards instead of your excuses is the turning point that shifts you from being stuck on someone who didn't value you to becoming someone who no longer tolerates that level of treatment. The truth is, most of the time when we stay attached to someone who doesn't deserve us, it's not because of love. It's because of the excuses we've built to justify why we're still holding on. We tell ourselves, he's just busy, he'll change, he cares in his own way, or things will get better if I'm patient. These excuses become a safety net that cushions the blow of reality. But excuses also keep you trapped in the same cycle, because every time you excuse his behavior, you lower the standard for how you allow yourself to be treated. Forgetting him coldly means making a decision to stop lowering those standards. It means replacing every excuse with a boundary. When he cancels last minute, instead of saying, "Well, at least he tried," you say, "I deserve someone who values my time." When he disappears for days without communication, instead of rationalizing, "That's just how he is," you say, "Consistency is a non-negotiable for me." When he fails to respect your feelings, instead of thinking, "Maybe I'm asking for too much," you affirm, "Respect is the baseline, not the bonus." Each time you choose a standard over an excuse, you step into your power. The beauty of elevating standards is that it instantly makes forgetting easier. Because once you see clearly that his behavior doesn't align with what you truly deserve, the illusion begins to break. He no longer feels like the one that got away. He feels like someone who simply didn't meet the bar. And here's the truth. When you raise the bar, you no longer waste energy wishing someone had jumped higher. You recognize that if they couldn't, it wasn't your job to lower it. Elevating standards also protects you from repeating the same mistake with someone new. If you don't rewrite your standards now, you'll attract another version of the same man in a different body. But if you use this experience as a moment to get clear on what you will and won't accept, you transform heartbreak into preparation. You begin to filter out anyone who doesn't show up with consistency, respect, and effort, and that filtering process saves you time, pain, and endless cycles of disappointment. The hardest part about this shift is letting go of the fantasy that he might rise to meet your standards. That's where excuses tend to creep in, because holding on to hope feels safer than facing reality. But if you want to forget him coldly, you can't keep living in potential. You have to look at who he is right now, not who you wish he could be. And if who he is doesn't match the future you want, the decision becomes clear. You stop bending, stop justifying, stop softening the truth. You acknowledge that he had his chance, and he chose not to rise. When you operate at this level of self-respect, you no longer feel the urge to chase, prove, or beg. You carry yourself differently. You stop explaining your worth to someone who never saw it, and instead, you demand it through your actions. That quiet refusal to settle speaks louder than any speech you could give him. It's the kind of coldness that isn't cruel, it's dignified. And dignity is magnetic. In the end, excuses may keep you comfortable, but they never keep you fulfilled. Standards, on the other hand, may feel uncomfortable at first because they force you to let go of people who can't meet them, but they guarantee that the people who remain are the ones who truly value you. Forgetting him coldly is not about punishing him. It's about refusing to punish yourself by staying stuck in something beneath you. When you stop making excuses and start living by standards, you'll realize he was never as hard to forget as you thought. He was only as important as the excuses you made for him, and once those are gone, so is he. Making peace your revenge is perhaps the most understated yet most powerful way to forget someone coldly. When a person hurts you, disrespects you, or takes you for granted, the natural urge is to want them to feel the weight of what they did. You want them to know your pain, to regret their choices, to see what they lost. That's human, but here's the truth: chasing revenge keeps you tethered to them. As long as you're focused on how they feel, you're still giving them space in your life. Real coldness, the kind that truly unsettles someone, is when you stop needing them to feel anything at all. Peace is the ultimate revenge because it says, you didn't shake me, you didn't define me, I moved on, and you're no longer part of the equation. Peace isn't passive. It's active. It's choosing to release resentment instead of nursing it. It's waking up in the morning and deciding that your energy belongs to your present, not to your past. It's resisting the urge to keep score because the game isn't worth playing anymore. And ironically, the moment you choose peace, you automatically create the effect that revenge could never achieve. Because nothing disturbs someone's ego more than realizing that the person they thought they had power over is completely unbothered. Think about it. Anger still ties you to him. If you're raging about what he did, you're still centered on him. If you're stalking his life just to see if he's miserable, you're still giving him the starring role. Peace removes him from the spotlight entirely. It says, I've got better things to focus on than whether or not you regret losing me. That level of detachment doesn't just erase him, it elevates you. It proves that your happiness isn't conditional on his remorse. Making peace your revenge also means you refuse to be hardened by the experience. You don't let bitterness dictate how you move forward. Many people, after being hurt, decide to close themselves off, to stop trusting, to treat every future relationship as if it will end the same way. But that's giving the person even more power. They get to dictate not just your past, but your future too. Cold forgetting means you reclaim your softness, your openness, your capacity for joy. Your peace is proof that he didn't ruin you. You can love again, laugh again, dream again, not because of him, but despite him. It also shifts the story from external validation to internal freedom. Revenge relies on him seeing your progress, your glow up, your success. Peace doesn't care if he sees it or not. Peace isn't performative. It's not about what the outside world notices, it's about how you feel inside. It's walking into a room without wondering if he's watching. It's achieving something new without hoping he hears about it. It's living so fully that he becomes irrelevant, whether he knows it or not. That's a colder, sharper cut than any dramatic act of vengeance. And here's the most beautiful part. Peace makes you magnetic. When you are grounded, calm, and centered, people are drawn to you. They can feel that you're not weighed down by old baggage. You radiate something lighter, freer, and while he may or may not notice, it doesn't matter. Because your peace isn't about him, it's about you becoming the kind of person who doesn't carry old pain into new possibilities. In the end, peace is the ultimate revenge because it ends the story without fanfare. It leaves no door open, no emotional tether, no lingering bitterness. It's the kind of ending that isn't loud, but it's permanent. Forgetting him coldly isn't about proving he mattered. It's about proving to yourself that he didn't. And when you stand in peace, you realize that revenge was never necessary, because living free was always the sweetest victory. The truth is, forgetting him isn't about erasing the past. It's about rewriting your future without him in it. It's not about noise, drama, or proving a point. It's about quiet strength. When you detach with discipline, rewrite the story in your favor, replace waiting with living, withdraw your energy like it's the most precious currency you own, raise your standards higher than your excuses, and finally make peace your greatest revenge. You don't just forget him, you transcend him. You prove to yourself that he was never the definition of your worth, only a temporary character in your story. And here's the irony: the colder and calmer you forget, the louder your absence will echo in his world. But by then, you won't care because your peace, your growth, and your joy will matter far more than whether he regrets losing you. That's the power of acting like he never mattered. You finally realize he never truly did.